It's episode 11 of the Improv London podcast with this week's guest, Chris Mead.
This ain't gonna be easy.
Some balls moving around.
Hello, I'm your host, Stuart Moses, and welcome to episode 11. This episode will give you the chance to hear Chris Mead define his improv style, find out the way in which his first attempt at the Harold resembled Doctor Who actor Matt Smith's face, and hear about the first time in living memory he's been completely content. All this and more. Do enjoy. Chris Mead, hello.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Super. I am very excited to be on this podcast.
I'm very excited to have you on the podcast.
Oh,
So it would be awkward if it was just one way.
One way. Yeah, I have been emailing Stuart for weeks. He's been maintaining a frosty silence, and then the other day he was like, "Yeah, all right, you can come."
Give you a go.
Yeah,
You
sure.
know, I treat them mean, keep them keen. That's very much my attitude.
Even now, I don't know whether this podcast will go out. He's sort of like, "We'll see how you do. If it's good enough, then perhaps we'll put you on."
You're here tonight because you're teaching a Hoopla course.
I am. It's the first one of a new long form. Ooh. So Hoopla is sort of doing 4 levels now. There's more than this, but you come in as a beginner, do 8 weeks of that, or 6 to 8 weeks, and then you do performance, which is short form performance, and then long form, which is where you learn the techniques that can fit into any long form format. So just about being present and connect, emotionally available and connecting with your partner, that sort of thing. And then some broad stuff like tagging and sweeping, editing, that sort of stuff. And then me and Katy have just started a new advanced class, which I teach on a Tuesday with her. We alternate weeks, which is different forms.
Right.
Actual different forms. So like 1 week the Harold.
Yeah.
One
It
week.
just takes 1 week.
It's fine.
We'll do that
It's
in a
fine.
week. That's a week.
Just to introduce people to them, not to get people to perfect them.
Yes.
And then we're doing Pretty Flower, Deconstruction, La Ronde, all sorts, Living Room. So yeah, so this is sort of third. These are people who have probably done about 16 weeks of classes,
Right.
done their first show, short form show.
Yes.
Now they're coming to learn the ways of the long form.
So it's the first night tonight, so you haven't met them.
It is, yeah.
You might have met them, but you don't know necessarily who's going to be in the class.
I don't. I've got a list of names. I don't recognise too many of them. But it's been a week of firsts actually, because I started 3 courses, teaching 3 courses Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all for 8 weeks. So I've been meeting new people every night this week.
Whoa!
Very exciting.
How easy is it for you to remember everyone's names?
Well, I have a name game that I nicked from IO, which is essentially pointing at someone else and saying your own name, and you do that a huge amount.
Yes.
Till everyone has said their own name over and over, and then you switch to pointing and saying their name.
Yes.
And then you switch to telling them who they are going to point to next, which is always the bit where people's minds explode. But you do that for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and the names stick.
Yes.
As long as everyone wears the same clothes and stands in the same location, from then onwards, I've got their name.
Yes, because I teach web design, and I think it's not 90% of teaching, but it's once you've got everyone's names down, it's just a lot easier because you're not pointing to someone and going, can you go and help them? You just, you've got their names and it's a lot easier.
Yeah, and there's something about the atmosphere in the class as well. Jason Schatz, I think, has got this whole bit that he does, which is like, we were strangers, and we were worried about each other, and there was this atmosphere in the room. But now we know each other's names. Instantly, we're sort of 30% more comfortable with each other than we were. And there is something like, once we know each other's names, like, we're a team now. We can let's improv.
Yes. So I'm interested in your teaching process. So.
I love it.
because it's because I've been on the other side of it, and I'm just interested kind of what happens behind the scenes. So, say for example, with this course you're about to start tonight.
Yes.
How much say do you have over the course contents? Does Steve Rowe say, look, Chris, I think you're pretty good, but this is what you've got to cover, or...
It's actually, Steve is incredibly generous with it. He allows each teacher to teach it their own way completely. He even says that you can sort of tell at the end of the class, if someone comes to a drop-in after doing 8 weeks with me or Maria or Katy or Sophie, he can tell, like we've somehow indelibly kind of stamped our improv style on people. Like, oh, you've been with Maria for a while. People take on our way of improvising a bit.
Wow.
So yeah, we aren't given a huge amount really. He says, at the end I want them to do long form.
Yes. And
he trusts us, which is incredibly liberating, and it makes you want to do a really good job. So I actually quite meticulously plan my lessons. I drop it if something else is more interesting in the room, but I want to have, something down. So that's the way it is. Actually, we've all started meeting as a improv faculty now.
Wow.
About once a month, and we teach each other games.
Brilliant.
So more and more now there should be cross-pollination of different people's favourite games and ethos. We'll do our little speeches that we do and stuff, and pick those things up from each other. So I do a thing at the end of every class where I get people to stick their hand into the middle and then jump up in the air and say improv. And I heard from down the hallway a big improv. So I know at least that has started to percolate through the Hoopla teaching community. And I mean, I have stolen mercilessly from Katy Schutte and Steve and Maria in my time. I like all the people that I sort of came up with through the scene, who I think are incredible teachers. Every time there's a great game. But when I went to study in Chicago at IO for 5 weeks, I wrote down everything that we did. Everything. I wrote down how it made me feel as a student, what I loved. I put big stars around because I like to doodle in my improv notes. And I just use all of that stuff because I know that the teachers have taken that from someone else. It's all a virtuous circle of thievery, really. So I think taking improv notes is incredibly important because essentially at the end of it, once you've got a full book of notes, you've written an improv book of all the things that strike a chord with you about improv. You've written your own perfect improv book.
Yes.
So now I've started putting them on a shelf in volumes. I used to have different ones for different sorts of improv.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So this is the free association book, and but now I just do them all in one until it's full, and then the next one until it's full, and it's just this kind of procession of crazy notes, and I love it, and I love going back and remembering the person I was when I was writing. It's better than a diary.
Yes.
Yeah. So so I think I've got a bit of a thing. I think I'm on a bit of a crusade now. People should write notes.
Yes.
I think because it crystallises in amber who you were and what you felt about improv on that day.
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes you forget that good stuff, I think.
Yes. It's very easy to forget the good stuff. And what I tend to do is on the way home, I will write about the class or whatever I've taken or the show that I've done, and try and capture it almost in a stream of consciousness at that point. So, just everything that's in my head, I just want to get it out on the page. Partly because I won't sleep afterwards if I don't. But also, it's really great to look back and think, oh wow, yes. Because it is easy to forget. It's easy to forget the good stuff, and mercifully it's easy to forget the bad stuff.
Yeah.
But having a record and being able to go back and remind yourself is amazing.
Yeah, and I'm in a group called Project 2, it's science fiction improv, and we are now going to record every show we do, and more than that, we're going to watch every single one. I hate it more than anything in the world. The way I hold my hands, the things I do over and over again, when I'm obviously not listening and staring out into the distance, but you see all of that stuff, and makes you want to put a stop to all the bad habits.
Yes.
I think it's the best thing you can do for your improv, really, if you're serious about perfecting it as an art form.
Yes.
But it's horrible. I mean, just horrible. But yeah, all of 2016, I'm going to be seeing myself being bad and not as great as I remember on stage over and over and over again.
But it could also work the other way, because I did a launch pad recently and I got someone to film that. And actually it was really helpful because from where you are on stage, it feels very different from what it actually appears to the audience. And I felt that we'd spent, you know, like it was only a 15-minute slot, but it still felt like we'd done half an hour's stuff before we got any reaction from the audience whatsoever. And it had been 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It was the first 30 seconds, so it seemed like a long time. And we hadn't even been aiming to get laughs particularly, it seemed like a long time before they came. And then I watched the video, and it wasn't long at all, it was just, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, time is something we've constructed, and it is, as a man-made object, it is fallible. You know, it's elastic. We can't really tell or measure it, especially when we need to.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's really interesting how it's all completely relative to our experiences.
You mentioned that Steve could tell if in the drop-in whose course they've been on. How does he tell one of your students?
Oh man, I think they will jump around a lot. They will get incredibly animated about stuff. I take the Mark approach of going to all schools of improv and learning. I'd like to be
the Mark Tyndall journeyman approach.
Yeah. I'd like.
That's really caught on you. I'm hoping that's going to catch on if I say it enough.
Yeah, I'm starting to say it. Yeah, the Mark Tyndall journeyman approach is definitely how I feel about things. And I wouldn't have been able to say what my style of improv was, but now I've really landed, I think, on a real connection between two people. To a scene where people are connecting on an emotional level, and the laughs, if they do come, and they don't have to come out of that relationship. Grounded, beautiful moments that could only happen through improv.
Yes.
That's what I would hope that my students would go on and be champions of. And that's what I hope, because I'm nowhere near being able to do that myself. But that's what I aspire to. People like Dummy and TJ and Dave are incredible. Like, I could watch them forever. Really, I could. And there's plenty more people who act in that style. Bob Dassey and Stephanie Weir, when they do WeirDass, are also like that. Just incredible performers. Craig Katowski, I feel like I should keep saying people, just these veterans who when they're on stage, they're so calm, right?
Yes.
But it's just so beautiful watch. They've got this.
Yes.
You know they've got this.
Yes.
I talk about improv as being part theatre, part circus act. You're always heart in your mouth, worried that they're going to fall, and that's what gives it its charge. But real veteran improvisers, you know that they've got a built-in safety net almost. They're attempting the most death-defying things, but you have complete faith in them.
Yes.
And that's what I love. No panic, no moves made out of fear.
Yes.
Just incredible listening and this ability to make their partner look incredible. That's what I want to do. That's what I try and instill in people, and that's what I'm hoping for, really, I guess. But actually, people who bounce around and are very excited about improv is probably more likely, I would say. There are actual holes in the wall, not in this room, but there are holes in the wall that were me getting so excited by a scene that I just jumped into a wall and made a hole in it. More than one in Theatre Delhi. That is just me being excited about improv. So yeah, that's embarrassing.
That's great. So let's turn back. Let's turn back time.
Right.
The man-made construction. How did you first discover improv? Where does your improv origin story start?
It was in uni.
Yeah.
In 2001.
Right.
Went to the Edinburgh Festival with my musical theatre society.
Marvellous.
We were doing a production of Edwin Drood, The Mystery of Edwin Drood.
All right, yeah.
Which is based on...
Did you stop after the interval? Sorry.
Well, it's very interesting, actually, because what happens in the musical is there were about 20 plus endings.
Really?
Yeah, so the audience vote on who the lovers are, who the overall villain is.
Yeah.
So the ending is variable. So it was a kind of safe improv, I guess, in that way. Well, but except completely scripted.
Yes.
Of course, you knew what happened in each of the endings.
But still, yes.
So we were doing that, and we're doing that in C venues, which is the perennial student venue. And after us in the theatre was this group called Baby Wants Candy, who were professing to do a 60-minute improvised musical where everything was improvised, the music, the score, the book, everything. Now, obviously, we didn't believe this and assumed they were at the same level as we are, like just a fairly good student group, you know, who had come up. They were actually, Baby Wants Candy, who are one of the most venerated and brilliant, firstly IO House teams, now independent teams in all of Chicago. This cast had in it Al Samuels, Peter Gwinn, Bob Dassey. These were mega stars, the best improvisers that Chicago could produce at the time. I went into that show and it was, I always say this, but I guess I need to say it again. If they had each just flown up into the air and whizzed around the auditorium, I couldn't have been more amazed at what they did. They were so funny and so playful and so warm and so interesting, and I didn't know we could do that as human beings. I didn't know we could be that fast and clever and brilliant. It blew my mind, and I'd been doing theatre my whole life. Starting when I was sort of 6 or 7, doing verse speaking at festivals, and then going on to being in amateur dramatic plays, and then doing stuff at uni and studying theatre A-levels, and then going and doing my degree in it. But it wasn't quite what I wanted to do. I was never a great actor. I always got the kind of comedy relief role. The stuff that I was best at was just the things I changed every night, really. And when I saw that, it sounds so weird, but really something clicked, and I was like, oh, this is what I should be doing. Theatre was just the nearest thing that I had available, but that isn't what I want it to be. I want this thing here. And then from that point onwards, I knew I wanted to do improv. I wanted to study it, and I wanted to perform. So went back to London after that incredible experience. Oh, I should say, they had been, Baby Wants Candy, they had forgotten to bring anyone to tear tickets for them.
Right.
So my cast said, we'll do it. So I got to see about 15 shows for free. I guess kept coming back, so I just saw it over and over again. Because at first I didn't really believe it. I thought there must be a formula to this. Yes. And then that was proved wrong very, very quickly. And so I saw a lot of them. And when I went back, I was like, right, let's do this. Nothing as I could find in London. Yeah. Nothing at all. And the internet was pretty basic in those days, so it wasn't like you could just Google it.
Yes. Yeah.
Or you probably could Google it, but there was only like 3 sites on there, and one of them was Hamster Dance. But so I couldn't do anything. Yeah. But I kept in contact with the Baby Wants Candy guys, and when they came back in like maybe 2004, something around there, they asked me to be their English producer.
Wow.
So I booked their accommodation for them. They famously give out candy on the Royal Mile as their kind of little flyering technique. So I had to go to the wholesalers and get the candy. And it was just me and my friend Ellen Mainwood. We were their production team. Now they have about a 15-strong intern team when they go up to Edinburgh. It was just the 2 of us. So I watched every show that time, all 30 shows, and every night the cast would congregate on the porch, on the stoop of our Edinburgh flat, and just sit and watch people make jokes and make up things. And I just did silly voices, little instantaneous skits, and it oh, the lights have just gone out. I'm going to run around the room.
Watch out for the walls.
It was like intravenously, I was fed all of this comedy brilliance, and I was like, okay, no, definitely, I've got to, maybe I'll start a theatre. So me and my friend Ellen were like, we'll go back and we'll start a little theatre. We'll call it The Porch, after the place where we sat with Baby Wants Candy, and we'll make a theatre. Came back, still nothing happening in London, and life moves on. I'm a dreamer, but not a completer finisher. And then, cut to a few years later, and my housemate, or I think she was just about my ex-housemate by that point, Nicola Kidner, rang me up and said, "Oh, that musical you like is in London. We should go and see it." And I was like, "I think I know if they were here." And that was Showstoppers.
Ah, right, cool.
And so I looked on the internet at that point and realised that the fledgling London improv scene had grown up while I wasn't looking. And now there was this incredible group called the Showstoppers that had grown out of Ken Campbell's sort of last project. And Ken Campbell was this incredible theatre maker, and he would never stand still in the style he would do. So he would do like a play that lasted over a day, write a play that lasted over a day. It was one of the things he did. Or he got interested in ventriloquism, and his last thing before he sadly died was improv. He got into improv,
right.
And he assembled this incredible group of people who are still doing it now: Dylan, Emery, Adam Meggido. So these were his sort of people who studied with him, rehearsed with him, I should say, and they created Showstoppers, and that had started sort of making a modest stir in the community. Yeah. And they taught on a Sunday something called the Crunchy Frog Collective.
All right.
And I went along to that. I can remember my first time I went along to that, and that was my start.
Yes.
So that was in 2009. I went to my first improv course. Although I had. I'd attended stuff when Baby Wants Candy would do little workshops, and but that was really the beginning of it. And, I met Steve Rowe, I met Michael Brunström, I met Sarah-Louise Young. They were just people in the class. It was crazy. And that's where it all began. So I just studied basically with Dylan, who was running it, Dylan Emery, every Sunday. I met Steve through that, and Steve had started running Hoopla with Edgar at that point, so I started going to that too. I went along to dozens of Showstopper shows, and they are incredible. They're incredible in a really different way to Baby Wants Candy.
Yeah.
In Baby Wants Candy, the musical element is almost incidental to them just having a laugh on stage.
Right.
But Showstopper are incredibly funny, but they're also very dedicated to creating a musical that is like a West End musical, and it's so funny because that was there right from the beginning. Now they are a West End musical. They're on in the West End, and they've got they're a hit. They've got an extended run. But right from the beginning, whether they were above a pub or behind a pub normally, but they always had that. We want to create the best musical we can. It's not an excuse for us to have fun.
No.
It's one of those differences I think between a lot of where everything's merged now, but at the beginning, English improv was very much about perfecting it and polishing it. Whereas a lot of this, certainly Chicago improv, I think, is about just squeezing as much fun out of it, and really to hell with the format if you're having fun to a certain extent. Yes. So that was really interesting. So I started doing them, starting going to Hoopla. Hoopla were doing shows, nothing like the shows they do now, just little short, but short form shows in rooms where you, as an audience member, you could reach out and touch them. It was such small rooms, sort of 8 meters by 6 meter rooms where you could have like 12 people in the audience. So I used to go along to those. And Steve would do these drop-ins and would do longer Saturday classes as well with people like John Cremer would come down for that. And that was amazing. And that happened. That was that long time, a year and a half, never performing, just going along to every single workshop I could, learning. And finally, someone invited me to be in a show, which was Michael Brunström. Was Michael Brunström first? Steve asked me to be in the Hoopla Halloween special.
Right.
And so this was so scary for me. The first time on stage, I was so scared. It was a massive moment. But then the week before, Roderick Miller asked me at the last moment if I could be in My Show, My Rules show that he ran at the Wheat Sheaf.
Right.
And so it was like it was sort of undercut. I was suddenly on stage that day, you know. It was like a week to go and I'm going to do my first improv show. No, it's tonight, I'm doing it. And that was brilliant. And I always... everyone's got a soft spot for Roderick, but I have a particular one because he gave me a break. And then Steve the week afterwards. And then Michael Brunström had this idea of this character called Kurt Hatred, who was this incredible philosopher and raconteur who doesn't exist. And we would tell stories about him. And we started doing that show as well. So then slowly, there weren't that many performance opportunities, but I slowly but surely started doing short form at that point, which was brilliant. And so that was me for sort of another year or so, because that was what was happening, really. Shall I keep going? This feels like... so
That's me nodding, by the way.
That was my short form days. And then after that, Baby Wants Candy was coming back to Edinburgh stuff. We went back. We were seeing shows. We were doing runs with... So around that time, I formed my own short form team, me and a group of friends, called The Ministry. So that was John Monkhouse, me, Jinni Lyons, and Nicola Kidner. So the four of us, we did a show called The Ministry, which was short form. Yes. We were booked once by the Methodist Conference.
Wow.
Just, I think, because of the ministry name, even though we had no Christian affiliation at all. So that was our biggest gig. That was to about 200 people.
How did that go down?
So well.
Really?
Like, we sat in the pub afterwards. We were shell-shocked. I can still remember it. Like, we did this. We made people laugh.
Yeah.
It was great. And then there was like a rival crew who had started at the same time called Cannonball. Right. And that had Rhiannon Vivian and Anthony, what am I saying? Andrew Gentilli, Dave Waller was in that, Crosswarren, and we did a lot of stuff together. One of our first gigs was we did a versus cage match, and then we all went up to Edinburgh together under the Cannonball name. Right. And during that we saw Baby Wants Candy again, and then we started thinking about long form. And at the end of that run, we were like, we're going to form a Harold team, a British Harold team, one of the first British Harold teams. I think one of the first groups that had formed specifically to create that form. We'd never seen a Harold. I'm a massive Doctor Who fan as well, and Stephen Moffat has once said that he thought Matt Smith's face was a handsome man if a group of old men who had never seen a handsome man constructed it from memory. It's a sort of a caricature of what a handsome face might look like. Right. In the same way, our Harold was a caricature of a group of people who didn't know what a Harold was, but kind of tried to do it. We had an amazing coach in oh my gosh, Tim. It was Tim Sniffen who was our coach, and Tim was part of Baby Wants Candy. He's amazing. He lives with his husband in Edinburgh now, so he's still around. I really hope he comes down and does more shows because he is incredible. And he took us for about 6 weeks. He just stayed for 6 weeks and coached us. Wow. Not just us. We weren't. He had a load of other things to do. Intense. And so we did that, and then after that...
But so he had seen a Harold.
Oh yeah, he was yeah. So, but we had never had.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
So we were one removed from it.
So how did you discover the Harold if none of you had ever seen it?
Just people used to talk about it, and it is the non-narrative long form that most people know. So if you're talking to Baby Wants Candy, who even though they are an indie team, did start out in IO, they're like, this is a good place to start. So that's why. And then after Tim went back, Katy Schutte took over being our coach, and we became 8-bit. And 8-bit were sort of a lot of Cannonball and the Ministry. So it was me, John Monkhouse, Jinni Lyons, Maria Peters, Nicola Kidner, Rhiannon Vivian, and Dave Wallen, and then Katy as our coach. I name everyone because all of those people have gone on to be teachers or sort of some big, they've gone on to do things.
Yes.
And I remember there's so 8-bit was the most fun rehearsals, the most fulfilling and incredible rehearsals I've ever had. I learned so much there, but the shows were uniformly terrible.
Oh, no.
We didn't do a good show
Why?
our entire time we were together.
Yeah.
Don't know. I think we were trying to do this format that we didn't know about. We didn't let ourselves play or be interesting in it. We were trying to hit the...
Yeah.
It's death to improv to just try and do the form well.
Yes.
And especially when we didn't know what the form looked like. Like, is this right? Maybe. So that was weird. But so I always put in mind of there was a team before Monty Python. I'm being very grandiose. We're not, but before Monty Python there was a radio team that had people from Monty Python and from the Goodies and from the Goonies in it.
The Goons.
Goons, sorry, yeah, the Goons. There was also some Goonies in
right,
it.
yeah, fair enough.
There were people from the Spielberg film, the Goonies in it. Yeah, it had Goons, Goodies, and Pythons in it, but it wasn't well known.
Yeah.
And I kind of, in our own small British improv way, I kind of think that 8-bit was that unsuccessful team that has then gone on to spawn some fairly successful stuff. Because Maria is now like a leading light of the improv community, teachers everywhere, all of that sort of stuff. John and Rhiannon went on to Music Box and the Maydays. There's been... people from that have gone on to do incredible things. I'm really proud of them all. But yeah, that team was pretty awful.
How strange. I mean, they do say that, bad rehearsal, good first night or whatever, but that was the opposite.
That's also true. Yeah, good rehearsal, or awful. So that split up eventually, but we'd got the long form bug by that point. And that's when everything else started, really. That's where Monkey Toast, what is now Monkey Toast, started with David Shaw, and I went and did like 4 courses and 4 levels in that. Crunchy Frog had stopped by that point because Showstoppers was so great, but where I kept going back was there's a 50-hour improvathon that happens, and I always managed to get in during the night shift, the bit where there was no audience. They needed people who, as we've discussed before, have a lot of energy but not a lot of talent. And so I was perfect for that. And so I would do the night shifts of these 50-hour ones to just get them through the night and be extra members. So I kind of kept on with Crunchy Frog and the Showstopper crowd there. It was they were really incredibly nice to let me be in the show. And then, Hoopla started getting bigger and bigger, started putting on more nights for us to perform in. Monkey Toast happened. And then we started, I guess that was where we started sort of teaching a little bit, and that was when Jules, who came out of the Maydays, and I was actually in a group with him. What was his first group? In the podcast, he was saying, You're right. I was listening very intently when he said it, and the one that came out of his drama school. I auditioned to be in that, and I got in. And I actually met him. He doesn't remember meeting me because I was one of the newbies. I imagine he didn't. He decided not to. Oh, it's gone dark again. You're going to run down now.
I just noticed there's a giant... I don't want to fall over.
You nearly smashed into a heater.
Yes.
Anyway, I was in that group for about 4 weeks.
Right, 4 weeks.
Yeah, and
You've got mastered this. I'm just.
it was. I left the night. I left the night. I went home and accidentally proposed to my wife.
Oh, I see.
Well, she wasn't my wife at that point. She was just my girlfriend. I came home from rehearsal and accidentally had to reveal that I was going to propose, and then everything got a bit mad, and I didn't go back to rehearsals after that. So it was quite a little dropped.
You had to reveal that you were going to propose.
Yeah, because she'd read an email that I was going to propose. She'd read some of my emails. It was like, what's this about? I'd convinced her that I was never going to propose, so she thought I was talking about someone else's proposal. But when she said it, I panicked that she was... So basically, I had to just go into emergency mode and just propose there and then without the ring. Yeah. So that happened that night after rehearsal, and then after that it all became too fraught, and I never went back. Hence the fact that I still can't remember the name of that group. But I was in that group for a little bit, and then the scene just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. I got married, and I invited a load of improvisers to my wedding. People that I didn't know very well, but I knew that I would become special to me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Well, some of them like 8-bit and stuff I knew.
Yeah.
But there were a few others like, I don't really know you that well, but I know we are going to be incredibly close, so I want you at my wedding.
Yes.
And we did a set at my wedding.
Oh, wow.
Which my wife Laura still maintains was one of her favourite bits of the day. And it was, for some reason, because it could go so wrong, this sort of thing, just beautiful.
Yes.
And that was 8-bit. I don't know why. That was fine. We did it. We showed our potential at that point. It was wonderful. And I knew that was going to be sort of really a part of my life. Wow. Did you want this level of detail?
Brilliant. It's brilliant.
I feel like this is our history. This is sort of like...
Good. It should be preserved. Has anyone written it down anywhere?
No, this is my oral retelling of it.
Exactly.
So that happened. Steve is a genius, as everyone knows, and built Hoopla up, started doing more nights than Miller. Jaws also started building the nursery, started talking to a lot of people about it. He's pretty good too, but he knows that. So the nursery started being a thing as well, started putting on nights. There were more places to perform. You could start more groups and stuff and know that you'd get a space. And it was around about that time that I formed Project 2 it was a 2-prov with John Monkhouse, who is my best friend. I've known him since I was 16. We've been through everything together. I lived with him for a long time. He is an incredible improviser, but doesn't think, up until very recently, never thought of himself as a performer. He's also an incredible technician. He can make things with his hands.
Wow.
Like he can make things with hands as opposed to his mouth. I know. He's incredible. He's practical, right?
Yeah.
So few artists are practical as well. So he can make stuff, and he's a graphic designer as well, and he is a technician and also an incredible performer. He's annoying. I think your best friend is someone who you would hate, seethingly hate with jealousy if you didn't love so much, right?
Yes,
that's sort of
No, I have. That's very much. Yes, no, I entirely understand what you're saying. There's one friend I role play with, and he's so brilliant that if I didn't like him so much, I'd hate him.
It's exactly the same thing. So 2-prov with him, and we just thought so we knew each other since we were 16. So at the time we were going on for sort of 15 years knowing each other. We thought that's an advantage, right? How long did it take to get that kind of group mind?
Yes.
So we started doing 2-prov together and asked Katy, who is, I think, one of the best improvisers in London. In London? No, in the UK and possibly the world, actually. Katy is on another level, I think, to most people.
Oh, nodding, I should.
I'm
nodding vociferously, but that doesn't come across on the podcast.
So she said she'd coach us, and we were like, this is amazing. And then within a few weeks, it became clear that Katy should be in it. We never thought she would, and then she did decide to be in it, and that became Project 2. We're all geeks, all science fiction fans.
So it was science fiction before Katy?
It was always going to be science fiction, and then Katy was always going to be our coach. And we had lots of other lovely coaches as well on and off, but Katy was the one that stuck. because she was not only the best improviser we knew, but also knew so much about sci-fi.
Yes.
And and she had done that going to I.O. thing long before anyone else. She was just so far ahead of the game on so many things. She knew where Harold was.
Yeah.
So that's how that started, and we started performing it everywhere we could with that. Hoopla and the nursery, and then we would travel up and go to the visit the Nottingham community, and then we went over to Chicago and did a week at the Annoyance.
Wow.
Which was a watershed moment. In fact, Mick Napier, Susan Messing, those guys, that should be on my list of other people that do those relationship-based, beautiful improv. So that blew my mind across the room. And also, I got to go to I.O. and see shows there while being at the Annoyance. I got to go and see the independent scene around Chicago. I came back so inspired, so wanted to move our community forwards. And it just kept growing. Other things started popping up. Free Association more recently, so I went and did level 3 in the masterclass there, and got invited onto RTing, which I did for a very short amount of time. Not because it wasn't brilliant, just because I had to propose to my wife again. Had to drop it. Gosh, yeah, I couldn't say no as an improviser. You're always saying this, right? You can't say no to stuff.
I just have to agree
and then
to
you
all.
have to kind of like, there are not 15 days of the week. I'm going to have to scroll back, and then I went. The big thing, and this is rewinding slightly, is that I went over to Chicago. I was going to do 12 weeks over there, around, and went over with John. Going to do the 5 weeks in I.O. That was the main part of it, which you're doing this year.
I'm not doing this year. Many other people are.
Oh,
no.
No, you're not.
No,
Because everyone was talking about it, about going. Yeah, so many people are.
Yes.
So that 5-week I.O. intensive,
yes.
That was the centre, but I was also going to go to... Oh man, I forgot to say, of course, that P-Graph came over as well and did a week narrative that changed everything about what I wanted to do as well.
Yeah.
So I wanted to visit them because Mark has spoken so eloquently about P-Graph. Just to say that I echo completely his sentiments about them. I think they're powerhouses of story and performance, and they are all wonderful people as well, annoyingly. So they're amazing. They came over, so I was going to go and see The Hideout, and John was going to act in their marathon, their version of the Improvathon at that point. Yeah. And we got stopped at the border because I said we were going to do improv. I said, it's just, we're not paid to do it, we're amateurs, we're just going to go over and... In fact, John's is a charity gig. We're not, but they said that was because there was a door fee. We were professional improvisers and were taking money away from the good, hard-working American improvisers. So we were sent home. We were escorted back and with armed guards and sent back home. And now it's very hard for me and John to enter the US now.
Oh no! God.
Yeah. So that was 12 weeks. We'd done all the accommodation in advance. Yeah. We had hired a convertible to drive from one end of the US to the other. We had all our classes. We just lost it all, and that was crushing.
Yeah.
I had to do something in those 12 weeks because I'd taken it off work and everything as well. So I went to Toronto for a few weeks because Canada would let me in, and the scene in Toronto is brilliant too.
Yeah.
The Suffragettes. Do you know the Suffragettes?
No, I don't know.
They are wonderful, and there's a group called Mantown they've got their own podcast.
Yes, I like the back line.
Yeah, and there's so much great stuff happening there. So I went there for a little bit, but basically I licked my wounds for a year. Felt awful.
Not surprised.
Yeah, and then tried again the next year. Got the right visas.
Yeah,
because it was a genuine mistake, right? There was nothing. We weren't trying to pull anything. We weren't. So I think we got there's something written in my passport, a code, but I think the code means just an idiot, rather than he's not a criminal mastermind. He's just an idiot. So I still get secondary questioning, but I can go in to the US now. But as long as I don't perform. So I don't perform in the US, I just go and learn over there.
Yeah. Wow.
So I managed to do that the next year. I did manage to get over there, visit the brilliant people in Austin. Yeah. And Mark's not wrong about the Austin community. It is insanely brilliant. I love it so much. And then did the Chicago stuff. And Chicago, I.O. was just opening its new venue, which is just opened, and so I got to see WeirDass got back together. I got to see Beer Shark Mice. I got to see TJ and Dave over and over again. I got to see TJ and Dave acting with Scott. What's his name from 30 Rock? So many. You're gonna Google it. I'll see if I can remember it for you. Oh, I'm going to Phil. I'm too honest for my own good, Stuart. Why do I not remember his name? Everyone's shouting at their own.
Adsit.
Yeah, Scott Adsit. Fantastic.
Well, it's obviously if I've looked it up.
Yeah. Scott Adsit, Bob Dassey, Stephanie Weir, TJ and Dave all in the same show. The best thing I think I've ever seen. I was meant to be in Austin. I booked a plane to fly back from Austin to Chicago for one night only to attend the opening of the new I.O.
Wow.
In fact, the whole 5 weeks, we were in the building before it was open to the public.
Yeah.
My class were the first people to do a Harold on the Harold stage in the new... before they'd even put up the set or the doors and stuff. We did the first show. We did the first Harold in the Harold venue. I can't believe it. It was really funny. So that was really good. And then, FA, Monkey Toast, Hoopla became this massive multi-tentacle thing all over the place. The nursery got its own venue and started putting on incredible shows and started its own courses. Everyone started voting over US teachers and Australian teachers, European teachers of note. There was this incredible cross-pollination. Every year, the scene built and built and built. More people coming over, more ideas shared. Showstopper always being brilliant. Ostentatious started. This sounds like one of those news feeds. Ostentatious.
See the things flashing up on the screen. The ticker tape's going as we go. Ostentatious started and became the kind of the belle of Edinburgh. Improv was becoming the Edinburgh. They were the best thing there. They had queues around the block, and they were so brilliant and consistently brilliant. Yeah. Some people before improv was like, you go along to it, and it was so hard to know if you'd get anything of quality because there were so many groups who were necessarily putting themselves on stage to get better, but weren't good by that point. Yes. And Ostentatious came almost out of the gate. They were brilliant. I was there at one of the first couple of shows, I think. And they were already so good. Yeah. And if you look at that cast, everyone in that cast is incredible. Steve Rowe making a second appearance. Hello, Steve.
And so it all happened. It all happened. And then Susan Messing was over for something, and I said, "What happens now? What should I do? There's so much to do." And she said, coach a team. That's the next thing. The UK doesn't have a coaching culture, and it needs one.
Wow.
So coach a team, you'll learn so much.
Yeah.
And so I put a advert on the Hoopla website saying, Chris Mead is going to coach a team. No one knew who I was. Anyone want to do it? And I was incredibly lucky to get this incredible group of improvisers. It turned out to be the Science of Living Things eventually.
Wow. Yeah.
And coaching them every week for maybe a year and a half, and then continue to coach them on and off, consolidated me as an improviser.
Yes.
Not the performing.
But that's what they say, isn't it? If you want to learn something, teach it to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And by the time I'd finished that, I felt that I could have a go at teaching.
Yeah.
So Steve let me start teaching, Jules let me start teaching, so now I teach both for the nursery and Hoopla. I've been doing that for a year and a half. So we're nearly up to date now, everyone. And yeah, so that's it. And I keep going and learning. We started Project 2 is now to a point, I think, where it's legitimately all right. Legitimately all right.
I think you're better than all right.
I'm really proud of us.
Yeah.
Personally, it is the kind of improv I want to see. It's got all the geekiness of people who really love sci-fi and are really into it. It's not just a surface thing. We love sci-fi. In fact, I should probably say SF. We're up to that point where the kind of geeks that we SF and sci-fi, or what should we call it? We're really into that sort of stuff. We're all teachers now and coaches, and it's the show I want it to be. It's stupid, stupendous, gigantic sci-fi, and these little moments of emotional depth and brilliance and the little sparks between two characters. And that's what I've always loved the most about improv, is the fact that it isn't the poor cousin to stand-up or theatre. It's two people finding each other in the maelstrom of just pretend, and forging a connection, and those sparks that jump between them, and finding out who they are to each other and what that means and how they feel about it is something you can't see anywhere else. It is the most incredible art form, and I'm so happy to be in it. And that's what I think we're moving towards. Project 2 has moments where it's exactly what I want it to be, more and more. So that is great. I've rejoined the Maydays, which is really nice, in Brighton, who are this incredible, professional, brilliant, sprawling group of incredible improvisers. I've missed out loads of stuff. But now I'm at a point where I coach and I teach and I perform every week, and I've actually moved my day job down from 5 days a week to 4 days a week.
Wow.
So that I can do it more, and I hope that I could listen to this podcast again in a year and be, now I'm down to 3 days, or I'm down to 2 days, because this is what I want. And more than that, improv has given me a community. It's given me a friendship group, like a university friendship group, where you have your close friends, but then you have this incredible second sort of this wider group of brilliant people who you can have a drink with and laugh with, who have a shared set of values with. You can walk into certain pubs across this great capital of ours and know you will find people there who you love.
Yes.
Yeah? So I don't think many adults have that, really, after they leave uni.
No, I don't think they do. And I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but that's really interesting. The shared sort of values and language is really interesting. And I did a course of Ian McNaughton, and it was documentary filmmaking. And because I knew he was an improviser, when I said, "Shall we end this on a song?" I was reasonably confident. I was 100% confident. He'd go, yes, let's end this on a song. Yeah. Whereas if it had been somebody that I didn't know was an improviser, I wouldn't even have asked the question, because I would have come across as someone that was mad.
Yeah, and so you're in a group of people who are going to say yes to things. And I think out of this incredible community of geniuses, artists and poets, it's going to spring so much more. We're starting to see podcasts and web series and scripted shows. Katy did a Ghostbuster musical called Who You're Gonna Call, which was incredibly well received. We're seeing other projects, and it comes out of this incredible bubbling cauldron of creativity that the improv community has started. And not just at our level, we're talking now, Carrie Adloyd, who is, internationally level brilliant. I think she is our ambassador. I think she's the UK improv community's ambassador. She shows what she can do, what can be done now in terms of moving into the mainstream, and she's credited as an improviser. It's not. She's incredibly good at being an ambassador and saying, "No, I'm not just a comedian. I'm an improviser, and that is a badge of honour for me." and she continues to do that sort of thing. Joseph Mapergo from Ostentatious as well is topping everyone's list of the comedian to look out for next year. You know, still, so it still comes and does little improv shows. We've got these brilliant, and the Showstoppers as well, of course. They still come and do little shows.
Yes.
One of the other things that I do now, which I really love with the nursery, is I produce a series of theatrical improv shows in the P-Graph mould. And I directed the first one too, which was called Emotion Play. And I'll go back to Emotion Play in a second, but we have Showstoppers who have agreed to be in one of those shows now.
Wow.
So we have people right at the top of the game who are supporting this grassroots stuff as well.
Yes.
But also the work, I think, is really good. I've never been more proud of a show than I was of Emotion Play.
Yeah.
It was based on a play called Love Play by Moira Buffini, which is set in the same patch of land over the entire sprawl of human civilization. We decided to do that, have a different emotion each time, and improvise the whole thing. But just every scene leapt forward, but was set in exactly the same place, exactly the same geographical location. But it was just an excuse to do an emotionally grounded scene after emotionally grounded scene, where laughter wasn't the point, but was a product of it, but not the only one. And do you know, I'm sure you get this, if you're someone who sees themselves as creative, there's always more that you could be doing. You're like, oh, I could be doing this, I could be...
Yeah.
Why am I not achieving more, or why can't I do this too? Through those weeks that I was doing Emotion Play is the first time in living memory where I was completely content.
Wow.
I just thought, yes, the thing that I aspire to do, I'm doing.
Yes.
So that's pretty exciting.
That's amazing.
And I'm doing another one next year, which is going to be called, it's tentatively titled The Harlequin's Guide to the Apocalypse, and it's going to be set after the end of the world, with a troupe of Commedia dell'arte players. So basically a group of survivors have thought there should still be theatre in this world, and have taken up this sort of ancient medieval form of improvised play, and are going to put it on.
That sounds amazing.
So, and it's going to flip between the actual play they put on,
Yeah.
and backstage Emotion Play style heart to hearts between the actors when they take, because the Commedia is masked, I should say, and each character, an actor would specialise in a character and put on the mask and know how to move in that. But so we'll have the masks off and have the kind of soap opera elements of what's happening in the troupe, fending for themselves day to day after the apocalypse, but also this big bawdy Commedia show. So we hope to do both.
Yeah.
We hope to actually, each member of the cast will take on a character and train in only that character and perfect the physicality. We hope to get some people who are Commedia scholars to actually make that authentic as possible, but also there'll be this surrounding kind of apocalypse theatre. And I hope that we will get ourselves a wooden cart to perform on, because they used to drag these carts to be their stage and stuff. So that's the idea for the next one.
Wow.
So we're going to try and bring do Commedia as authentically as possible, but also see behind the mask as well. So I think the Nursery Originals run is going to be amazing. Next year we've got one set with photos and sort of old photos and things like that, which is called Flashbulb. We've got one set in a restaurant which Jinni Lyons is directing. We have one set in a cabin in the woods, like a kind of a horror sort of thing. Anyway, we've got this incredible group of plays coming up. So I'm really proud of that too, and I'm really proud of how everyone in the community is talking to everyone else and performing in everyone else's shows. It really feels like we're on the cusp of something really big.
Yeah.
And I don't think everyone's going to take the Cariad route and be famous, over and above. But I think a bunch of us are going to be able to be a big part of our lives, and I'm so excited about that. I'm so excited. Whoever opens the first complete theatre, purpose-built building with classrooms and stuff. That's going to happen. That will happen in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And people come over from New York and Chicago and Austin, and they say, this community has the feel of our communities before that point where we had our own venues.
Yeah.
You're on the cusp of it. This feels like going back in time. It feels like so exciting. It's the potential energy that is thrumming through the community at the moment. And we're part of it. Don't you find it? How did we do this? How did we stumble onto this incredible well of creativity? I'm so thankful, and it's not worthy of this this thing that's happening to us.
Yes.
And and there's so many examples of that all over the place. I guess another really great one is Do Not Adjust Your Stage, which I've sort of grown up with. They started Do Not Adjust Your Stage around the time we were still performing in 8-bit, I would say. Yeah. And they are now, we've seen them growing up. They're so good now. They are jaw-droppingly good. Yeah. I can't speak to them because I'm starstruck a little bit. And they were those are my peers. People have got to that point now. They're amazing. And I just, where are we going to be in 5 years? Where extrapolating out with that level of growth and enthusiasm and numbers. Where are we going to be in 5 years?
That's a very good question.
Oh man.
I think we should leave it there.
Okay, cool. I've just spoken for the whole time.
I made this.
If you want to find out more about Chris, follow him at Mr. Chris Mead. And if you want to find out more about this podcast, follow us at Improv London.
That's improv!